All right, welcome back. Nick Wright's around the corner. Caron Butler, Sam Darnold, starting quarterback for the New York Jets, will be joining us as well. I'm watching last night I'm watching Houston, and I'm watching the Rockets with Chris Paul polish off, a solid Utah team, but they were overwhelmed. But history, I think, is going to prove me right. Remember, I was talking about this a couple days ago. I said when Shaq and Kobe broke up, I absolutely believe the Lakers made the right decision to keep Kobe and move Shaq. Shaq wasn't a good practice player. He was increasingly missing games. Long term, keeping Kobe over Shaq was a right move. But I knew for a year or two I'd have to eat a dirt sandwich because Shaq was going to Dwayne Wade, Pat Riley, and a championship-built team, and Kobe had to wait for the next star, which in a couple of years, Pau Gasol, he eventually got. I think history is going to prove me right on all these arguments that LeBron James is currently the MVP of the league and last year got one vote, and this year, most suspect he'll get no votes. So last year, Westbrook got all the votes except one, and then this year, Harden is going to get all the votes. I think history, 25 years from now, we're going to say, what the hell were we thinking not giving LeBron the MVP? So just think about, I think there's a anti-LeBron bias out there. So let me give you this example, is that James Harden added Chris Paul, and they won 10 more games when the West was better and deeper, and they get to the Western Conference Finals. And by the way, Chris Paul, not James Harden, was the best guard on the floor last night. So clearly, Chris Paul was the key component to the Houston franchise in getting to the Western Conference Final. Because they didn't get there last year with Harden and D'Antoni. They didn't get there last year with Ariza. They didn't get there last year with that bench. So they had Chris Paul, 10 more wins in a tougher West, and they elevate to the Western Conference Finals. LeBron, by the way, loses Kyrie Irving, same number of wins, they're back in the Eastern Conference Finals. So just think about this for a second. Harden and Chris Paul, when they played together, 44-5, highest winning percentage in the league. When Harden played without Chris Paul, 15-8, good, not great. Who's the MVP of Houston? The key word is valuable, not who scores more points. So remember this. LeBron last year got one vote for the MVP, and the reason only one vote, because Russell Westbrook, remember the story? Russell Westbrook lost a star and had a great individual year. So LeBron lost a star, Kyrie, and his points were greater, his assists were better, his rebounds were better, his steals were greater, his blocks were better, his free throw and three-point shooting was better. So Westbrook was given the MVP because he lost a star, but his numbers were through the roof. LeBron lost a star, and his numbers all went up. He's not going to get an MVP vote. So this year, and by the way, Westbrook loses KD. Oklahoma City had 8 fewer wins, and they were dusted in the playoffs. LeBron loses Kyrie, same number of wins, and they're back in the Eastern Conference Finals. So how do you not have a bias here? And you had it last year with Westbrook. All the things that lined up for Westbrook, they all lined up for LeBron, and he got a vote last year, and he'll get none this year. And I would say it again with James Harden. James Harden is going to get every first-place vote from most of the writers. I doubt LeBron gets a single vote. Could I not make an argument that Chris Paul, not James Harden, is the MVP of this team? What is the component, if the word is valuable, that gave them 10 more wins in a tougher West and got them to the Western Conference Finals? It's not James Harden. He was here. It's not James. Via the Coward Global Satellite Network. Nick Wright is joining me. Let's start with Chris Paul. Let's start with Chris Paul in Houston. I always loved him. I've said, Whereas Westbrook's a little like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It's a roller coaster ride. Chris Paul's sort of a 9-10% investment, great defender, smart kid, very efficient, never flashy. I know what I get. I know what my value is in return every year. I feel like a really, really great player finally found a non-dysfunctional organization with Daryl Morey, and this happens all over America to a lot of different people. What do you make of what Chris Paul did?
I'm so happy it happened and the way it happened, with Chris Paul being the guiding force in Game 5, with arguably one of, if not the most important playoff game Chris Paul's ever played in, being his best playoff game. The most points he's ever scored in a quarter in any game in his career. The first 40-point, 10 assists, 0 turnover game by anyone in NBA playoff history. I'm glad it happened because that narrative needed to die. Basketball people have known for the better part of a decade that Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards ever. When he's done playing, he will be in the argument as the third greatest point guard ever, behind Magic and Oscar.
Yeah, he'll be in the argument. Yeah, he will.
He'll be in the argument. He'll be in the room. Now, John Stockton's in that room. Isaiah Thomas is in that room. Steph Curry will be in that room. He will be in that room, though. That's who he was before last night and after last night. The best defensive point guard since Gary Payton, one of the best assist-to-turnover guys ever, one of the best leaders ever. He deserved this moment. I'm glad he got it.
By the way, let's go back to my Westbrook thing where Derrick Rose had a little bit of the Westbrook thing where they're not terribly efficient or great shooting guards. They're not great defensive guards, but there is a cryptocurrency. There is a Bitcoin. There is a, good God, they're exhilarating. They're exhausting. You wake up rich, honey, we never have to work again. The next day you wake up, honey, we have to sell our house. Is some of the Chris Paul criticism because, frankly, he's not that appealing to the eye. He's not vertical. He's not exhilarating. He's just a safe investment.
Listen, I don't know if I can fully follow the analogy because, unlike you, I'm not exorbitantly wealthy, so I don't know that much about Bitcoin. However, if I can follow it a little bit, yeah, like Chris Paul plays below the rim. Chris Paul has never had a make you jump out of your seat dunk in any time in his career. Chris Paul also is a little herky-jerky. He is not the most athletic guy. There are a lot of reasons why Chris Paul is not the guy that people will fall in love with. But smart NBA people adore him. I had a general manager 5 years ago. Think about this. 5 years ago, tell me he would argue Chris Paul's the second greatest point guard in the history of the league behind Magic Johnson. Now, that might be overstating it, but that's someone that's still a GM to this day who thought that highly of him back in 2013. And the other reason Chris Paul's been underrated is people simply don't care about defense unless you're a rim protector.
Yep.
Chris Paul's perimeter defense, he's been first-team All-NBA perennially. There is a reason that the greatest player ever considers him one of the greatest players in the league. That's LeBron to him. Like, no, you are preaching to the choir on Chris Paul. I know people think I'm in the bag for Houston. I'm not from there. I just lived there temporarily. This is how I felt about Chris Paul in New Orleans, in Los Angeles, and now in Houston.
You know, it's interesting. Tiger Woods was the most amazing golfer I ever saw, Nick, for about 11 years. But Jack Nicklaus is the greatest ever because he was in the Masters top 10 for 4 decades. Mike Tyson for 7 years was shockingly intimidating. Ali was great for 16. Here's the thing. At some point, we get over perfect Joe Montana and say duration and volume wins. Tiger Woods said this yesterday. I want to play the tape talking about legends in LeBron. Here's Tiger.
To dominate something is one thing. You know, every player out here can have one good week, you know, and blow away the field. Okay, great. Now, can you do it for a month? Can you do it for a year? Now, do it for a decade. Do it for a decade plus. And then they start separating, you know, what is truly great. And what LeBron has done for, 15 seasons now, it's just remarkable because it's that type of longevity, and to be able to be up for that long a period of time, and to be able to adjust as well, because we all know as we age that we're not going to be as athletic as we used to be, and so you have to do it different ways, and to be fluid and adjust and still be that talented and that good, And hats off to not just LeBron, but a lot of the players, the people I just named.
So again, now Michael had 8 years in which he won 6 titles. I believe we're getting to a point with Brady, with Jack Nicklaus. We're getting to a duration volume time with LeBron where the unthinkable is now discussed regularly. What do you make of Tiger's thoughts about LeBron could have another 5 years of this, Nick?
Listen, when you are evaluating all-time greats, I hate to be so analytical about it, but it's something of a math equation. What is your apex? How long are you at the apex? So let me give you 2 NBA players that illustrate this perfectly with where their historical ranking is. Take a guy such as Karl Malone. His apex was that of an A- all-timer, but he stayed at that apex for 15 years. That's why he is rated higher than what his actual best was. Then there's the other end of that spectrum. There's Shaquille O'Neal. His apex was, in my eyes, as great as any player there's ever been. But he only stayed there for about 3 years.
Yeah.
That's why instead of being in the top 5, he's around 12 or 13. You have 2 guys whose apex was as high as anyone's ever, and their duration was as long as anyone's ever. LeBron and Kareem. LeBron, at the end of this year, Colin, will have more top 5 MVP finishes than Jordan had complete years in Chicago.
Wow.
This will be his 13th consecutive top 5 MVP finish. This year, he will break the all-time record for first-team All-NBAs at 11, breaking, I believe, it's Kareem's record. So even if you believe, I don't believe this, but even if you believe Jordan's apex was slightly higher than LeBron's, his duration is going to lap Jordan's. And accomplishments, team accomplishments, Jordan has him beat with the 6 rings. But by this time next year, LeBron will have scored more points. He already has more rebounds. He already has more assists. He already has more of everything in the counting stats in the playoffs. He already has more playoff wins. He already has a better box score plus minus, VORP, all the advanced statistics. And so, yeah, the accomplishments, aside from the team ones, he has him beat. The apex argument is very close. And the duration, it is not even close, which is why I told you, I think, almost exactly 2 years ago. The day LeBron walked off the court against the Warriors, beating the greatest team ever to complete the greatest 3-game stretch ever, that's the day he became the greatest player of all time. He is simply furthering the gap since then.
Tonight, Philadelphia goes to Boston. I suspect it'll be close, and I suspect Boston wins narrowly, but this is not your typical 3-1 series. This could be 3-1 Philadelphia. I think they have a terrific future. I just think they're facing right now the best coach I've seen in a long time situationally. But let's narrow it down to Ben Simmons. Earlier today I said basketball's fairly simple. Put ball in basket, keep ball out of basket. He is right now the top-rated defensive point guard, 1 or 2. Led the NBA in blocks for point guards, 3rd in steals. 6'10 strong, can't teach a lot of his strength. He is also a 16-point, 54%, 8.5 assist guy. Again, 20-year-old rookie. I love him. I don't care about the 1-point game. LeBron froze in year 8 in the finals. Tragic Johnson, Kobe quit. I don't care about that. I think this narrative he can't shoot is now being massively overplayed. Where do you fall on Simmons?
Listen, I thought I was going to be the biggest Ben Simmons fan on FS1, and then I heard your show 2 weeks ago, and I was like, well, I was on that corner, and Colin drove by and just sprayed it to where he's the only man on that corner. So I have ceded it to you. But I'm with you on Ben Simmons with a bit of an asterisk. Think about those 2011 finals for LeBron. And think about what he said last week about Dwayne Casey, who was the defensive guru for that Mavericks team, now obviously the head coach for the Raptors. LeBron said, I was not a complete player. They exploited it. They took advantage of it. And I had to become a complete player. For Ben Simmons to become the guy you believe he will be, the guy I believe he will be, he has to develop something of a jump shot.
Yeah.
You cannot be... Forget a threat to make it. He's not a threat to shoot it. And while maybe it took a brilliant coach in Brad Stevens to lay out the blueprint, any coach in the league can duplicate the blueprint, assuming they have the athletes. I am a huge buyer on Ben Simmons. I think there are 3 guys in the league right now that are not at the top of the league but have best player in the league potential. Simmons, Embiid, and Giannis. I don't know which of those 3 is going to get there. Maybe a couple of them will. But Ben Simmons has to become a guy that you can't leave open from 16 feet. And I talked to someone very close to Ben this past weekend when they were down, before they got their first win, when they're down 3-0. And this person felt that this type of loss will be good for Ben. Because Ben is pretty confident, let me put it at that. He carries himself as if he has arrived, and to a degree he has. But if they lose, and if a lot of the loss is on him, the person I spoke with felt he will redouble his efforts this summer to become a more complete player. And I will say this, if he just gets a semi-reliable jump shot, the league is his. There is no guarding a 6'10" point guard that is that athletic if he can shoot even just a little bit.
Yeah, and I should note that the one thing, Nick, I have always given young players a break on is shooting. Listen, you don't get that much practice time. College basketball, I don't think the coaching's great. You got classes, even if you're faking it. You go to the NBA, the one thing you can do by yourself or with a trainer is shoot. I've seen guys make big jumps. Jaylen Brown has made could not shoot at Cal. Is now
Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
How about Kawhi?
Couldn't shoot.
Listen, you can, and Ben Simmons never had to. Why didn't Ben Simmons learn this before? Well, when you're this big and you've always played point guard, you don't need, young people don't like to work on things they're not good at, and they don't like to work on things they don't have to. He never had to pay a penalty for not being able to shoot.
Right.
Because he was always just the biggest, strongest, fastest guy out there. He's now paying that penalty. I think he will come back next year even better.
Good seeing you, buddy. Nick Wright, first things first. Thanks. Yeah.
You two, real quick, if I may, I'm sorry. Congratulations once again, Colin, on the Emmy nod. It was so important for the network. It was so well-deserved after your lifetime of work. I'm sorry you didn't get the win, but so congrats, man. I really, really am happy for you all.
Thank you very much. It's a testament to the people around us. We have a remarkable staff. So do you on First Things First. Thanks, buddy. I mean, the Ben Simmons thing, man, it's you can just look around this league. I can give you multiple examples of guys, including Magic Johnson, Kawhi Leonard. They came into this league and they couldn't shoot. When you're a 6'10" point, I mean, he scores at the rim in the NBA. He scored in college. What do you think it was like in high school? Coming up next, boy, oh boy, New England did it again. Yes, LegalZoom.com has some qualities that you can't teach. Or maybe you can, but they're still great qualities. When you think of LegalZoom.com, you think of reliable. Over 2 million people use their service. LLCs, S-Corps. Number 2 is experience. 15 years. 15 years helping business owners. How about helpful support? Right people standing by, all based in the U.S. How about legal advice? Not a law firm, but legal advice, independent attorneys in all 50 states. What about no surprises? Complete transparency, upfront pricing. LegalZoom.com, code Colin, C-O-L-I-N. 15 years, over 2 million businesses have stepped in. LegalZoom.com, code Colin.
Continental tires are built for the road that connects you to all